Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacalyn. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacalyn.com to book an appointment today.
Hi, welcome to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, live here on Business Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live. Our show is all about stories of hope, inspiration, and overcoming adversity. I am your executive producer and host, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and I am a certified life coach as well as team and business coach. My guest today has done it all. She is a CEO, she's an author, she's a TEDx speaker. I'm going to bring her out because there's so much more that she's accomplished, and I want her to be able to share in it. Welcome, Kristin Smedley, to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Good to see you.
Hey, it's so nice to see you again. We met before on another interview, and I know you've been crazy busy since then. So what have you been up to?
You know, these days I say if you're crazy busy, it's a good thing, because there was, as everybody knows, a few months ago, there was a whole lot of crickets not having anything to do. And actually for me, 20 years ago, there was all of my hopes and dreams and plans were shattered. And I could never have predicted that right now I'd be on the verge of my second book coming out, a live show that had started during the pandemic and has reached around the world. I was just looking, I think we hit our 15th country today. Wow. Yeah, I've got a big virtual summit with hundreds of people coming in it in a couple of weeks. I mean, I can't stop smiling. I haven't slept in I don't know how long, and you can't see what's happening behind the screen. Thank you, God, but it's all good.
I am so happy for you and so proud of you. And so I know your story, but many of our listeners might not, and some of our viewers. And by the way, welcome to people who just joined us from Facebook. So can you share your story? You've written this book, Thriving Blind, and it's very personal and it relates to your family. So what can you share with us about how you got started on the journey that you're on today?
Yeah, so I want to see if I wish I had your listeners in front of me that I could see a show of hands, but just if you're in your car, wherever you're at, give it a hoot or woot, whatever. If you're one of those planners like me, that I just was, I mean, I have lists all over my office, my house. I love checking boxes and crossing it off at the end of the night. And I planned my whole life. Like, it's weird. Since I was 5 years old, I knew I was going to be a teacher, and I did everything. I live in the Philly area. I went to the school to be a teacher. I lined up my whole life: teacher, married, house, car, friends, social, everything. And I planned all that and I achieved it. But I dreamt my whole life to be a mom. I could not wait to be a mom. It was like my number one thing. I can't stop smiling. I have the most incredible role model in a mom. And I knew that was my purpose in life. My number one purpose was to be a mom. And as if those of you that might be my age, I won't reveal that age, but those that remember Y2K coming onto the scene and everyone was upset that all their computers were going to crash, I was getting ready for my firstborn son arrived just a few weeks after all the computers didn't crash. And if you've carried a baby, then I'm sure that you can think about and smile about that as your belly was growing, like mine was. My hopes and dreams for that little person were growing. I mean, you start out with, oh, I'm so excited, I'm going to have a baby, and I hope that they're healthy. And by the time Michael's born, I had him like quarterback for the Eagles, the pitcher for the Phillies, valedictorian, married, I had the whole scene all ready to go. And I was sitting there looking at him, that perfect little face, the perfect little body, and watching him just become this little human, And then at 4 months old, when Michael was 4 months old, in a little exam room in the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, a doctor told me, your son is blind. Mm. And for all the planners out there that are like, what? Wait, I did not plan for that. And look, I had memorized what to expect when you're expecting. Remember that book? And it gave you like week by week, and I knew what to expect. And I was looking up the foods and everything. There was no what to expect when you hear your son is blind. There was actually nothing. There wasn't a pamphlet. There wasn't a flyer. There wasn't a phone number to call. Nothing. And I mean, this was 20 years ago. There was no Facebook, no Twitter, no Instagram, nowhere to go. So where did I go? I went home to my couch and cried over the life I was supposed to have. Was never going to happen. And I had said to that doctor, I was trying to figure out how blind, because I had known this little person for 4 months, and it did not occur to me that he was blind, right? And I said, will he play baseball? And he said, no. And I'm like, will he drive? And it was just no after no after no. Wow. So I sat for quite too long. I give myself a lot of grace now, almost 21 years later, but I sat for a long time kind of trying to smile during the day and pray blindness away every night. I just would pray it away. Come on, God, this wasn't in the cards. Come on. There's going to be something that happens overnight or some miracle will strike him. I went to shrines and oils and all kinds of stuff and people praying that suddenly we would wake up, and every morning I'd wake up and go in Michael's room and he was still blind. And I just felt like nothing was being answered. No dream was ever going to be achieved. And then lucky enough for me, when I was pregnant with my second child at about 7.5 months, I was at my absolute worst day of my life, because I just could not grasp the fact that my Michael was 3.5 years old and was missing out on all the life he was supposed to have, right? And now I have a second baby coming. The chances, the percentages are 1 in 4. You have a 1 in 4 chance with every pregnancy with LCA CRB1 that you're gonna have another affected child. And I was literally crippled in fear. And if you've ever been in that spot where you can't take one action step to get yourself out of that pit. And I was so in a pit of anger and sadness and the most fear I had ever experienced in my life. That how would I do this twice, And it didn't look anything like the mom picture that I was supposed to have. And then my Michael came bouncing into my room, because Michael didn't walk like ever. He was always bouncing and skipping and dancing and running. And he came bouncing in, and the most incredible thing that he ever said to me that morning was, "Mommy, isn't this the best day ever?" And his face was lighting up. And if Hollywood wrote this scene, they would write it with a marching band and all kinds of music and lights and lightning bolts that hit me right in the head, because all of a sudden it was like a ray of light was on Michael. And I thought, oh my God, this kid is always happy. I said to him, why is this the best day ever? And he said, "Mommy, the sun is up and I have all my toys and I'm so happy." And that summed up Michael's every moment of his 3.5 years on this planet. He only saw the good. He figured everything out, so much so that people didn't even know he was blind, because he figured everything out. He had different strategies that I wasn't even picking up on. And the thing was, I said I had prayed blindness away, and I wanted a cure, desperately wanted a cure for blindness. And I did get it. In that moment, it was my blindness that was cured. My blind spots were gone. What I saw as devastation and upsetment and loneliness, Michael had none of that. That was me grieving the loss of the dreams that I had for my son, and I had no business putting them on him in the first place. And I know as moms and dads and grandparents and friends, it's all in the most extraordinary love that we want our kids to have these big, beautiful lives, right? And we want them to do better than we did. And we want, and we dream for them. But honestly, it's their purpose. It's their journey. It's their life. And the thing that blindness gave me, I was thinking everything it took away from me, but it gave me a vision of what it's supposed to be a mom. Was it easy? No, it was so hard, especially in the very beginning, to learn and learn and learn and accept and accept and accept. And I still have days where it stings. Michael's going to be 21 years old, and there's days where blindness stings me for a second. And then I have to shift my perspective. But in that moment, 3.5 years old, when Michael said, "Isn't this the best day ever?" changed my perception of blindness, thank God. Because from that day, Michael and me and his blind brother Mitchell and their sighted sister Carissa that came a little while later have all been on a trajectory that no Hollywood screenwriter could ever have written.
That is such an incredible story. I've heard your story before, and I still have chills thinking about it because you're so transparent with what you were going through and how you realized that your blindness. I love the fact that you just shared that at some point it was about you and not about him. Mm-hmm. And I've read all the accomplishments that your children have had. It's incredible. Can you share some of those with us?
Yeah, here's an interesting one that I'll let land for everybody first. I won't start with the typical ones that I do. So when Michael was in kindergarten, I handpicked. I was very blessed in the life I am in or was in then. Handpicked his elementary school, which is one of the top in the nation, and they expected him. It's a regular school. With all sighted kids, they expected my Michael to achieve at 70% would be his top. Not 100% that they expected of everybody else because they said he's blind. Michael out-achieved everyone. He had 600 kids in his graduating class from 12th grade. He out-achieved almost all of them. He was the valedictorian that I thought was a dream of mine I had to let go of. And he was just honored at Penn State University for being in the top 1% of 75,000 undergrads. And Mitch, his younger brother, that is 1,000% different from him, my overachiever, underachiever, right? Middle child, hilariously fun, but holy God, he does not believe in homework. Mitch just achieved, he's in the top 3% of seniors in this country.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's been quite that all of that just happened last week.
That is, and by the way, as a Penn State alumni, I'm just that's outstanding. That's just
he loves it there.
You're such an incredible, accomplished person yourself. I'd have to think your children would be the same because you are truly a go-getter. And I want to hear more about the things that you're doing. We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. So stay with us. And Kristin Smedley here on Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn on Business Talk Radio. And again, thank you to our friends who are on social media, Facebook and YouTube. We appreciate you. Be right back.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I'm the host of the Ralph Graves Jr. Show, and I want to invite you to pick up my book, Unstoppable. I wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. The one thing that my 20 years of law enforcement has taught me is that no matter who you are, we are all governed by universal laws, like gravity. But in this book, we're going to talk about laws like the law of forgiveness, laws like the law of control, the law of intelligent practice, the law of expectancy. I was able to see how those, no matter what their background was, those who identified and treated these laws with respect, they were able to go on and lead successful lives. So pick up this book, and you can go ahead and pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, RalphGravesJr.com, where anywhere where fine books are sold. Thank you.
There are 7.7 billion people on Earth today. 40% of these people are under the age of 25. Young adults are the most fertile mission field in the world today. In Scripture, we see Jesus pouring his life into 12 young adults who he equipped to change the world and all of history. Like Jesus, we believe that the best approach to reach the world with the gospel is to invest in young, emerging leaders and equip them to build disciple-making movements. Concentric is the notion of surrounding and sharing a common center. Our center is the model and strategy of Jesus for both leadership development and ministry formation. As a global alliance, we provide equipping in biblical leadership based on Jesus' example in the New Testament. Jesus modeled for us how to make disciples that reproduce. Focusing on leadership development is key to creating movements that spread the gospel and Jesus' disciple-making strategy to young leaders around the globe. Our Ministry Alliance partners are actively equipping leaders and building movements of multiplication that reproduce the life of Christ. Join us today to equip young leaders with Jesus' strategy that will change cities and nations.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAP partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAP partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Academy Sedan and Limo is a full-service transportation company serving the Philadelphia metropolitan area with full knowledge of the New York City, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. areas. We pride ourselves on being the most dependable, conscientious company in the industry. Our always on-time service and dependable pricing make us the company to call for any event or occasion. Our vehicles can accommodate any size party for any occasion. Our vehicles range from four-door sedans to SUVs to minivans to limo buses to full-size tour buses and can accommodate groups of 2 to 100. We offer airport shuttle service or over-the-road service without limitation regarding mileage or time, and no drive is too long or too far. So if you find yourself in need of transportation of any type with any vehicle, give us a call at 610-842-4564 and let us show you what a real transportation company can do for you.
Use code ACADEMY2020 to receive 20% off your first 3 rides, including parking and tolls.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. The most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Hi, welcome back to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, live on Business Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live. My guest today is Kristin Smedley, and it's a pleasure to have you. So we have so much we could discuss because you are so accomplished, but I want to get back to your children and the accomplishments that they've had. You were just sharing about Penn State and your son being valedictorian and just so many positive things, and people need positivity right now. So what else can you share with our listeners and our viewers about your family?
Yeah, I had said that my first question when I heard that my son was blind was, will he play baseball? Which sounds odd, right? But that was I grew up an athlete. So I guess I just had all this athletics on my mind that was going to be his life and his social life and whatnot. And the answer, of course, was no, because he's blind. He's a Braille reader, a white cane user. But Michael and Mitchell have always found a way to do the things that they want to do. And they played baseball. I mean, they started in sports for the blind so they could learn how sports go and whatnot. But they wanted, by the time Michael was 9 and Mitch was 6, they wanted to be in the regular neighborhood leagues. I guess because they were in public school, like the regular neighborhood schools, and they'd hear all the trash talking at lunch, with boys that age about the umps that stink, and who cheated and whatnot. So they wanted in. And, I'm very blessed to live in the town that I'm in, that I went to, the big baseball registration day with my son with his white cane in his hand. And God love them all. They found spots for Michael, and then years later for Mitch. But both of my boys were the only blind kids to ever play, and they both won championships. Michael on a team that was like the Bad News Bears, that by the rule of the league got a play in to get into the playoffs, and then they kept winning and making the town. The town was like crazy that this team kept winning. And Mitch was on a winning team that triumphantly went in and won the championship. Two very different stories, two very different personalities, but equally proof that when the tools and resources are in place, like they had to tweak baseball just a little bit for my boys to play. And when people get out of their way, and when we drop the expectation of what we think blindness is, or drop the expectation of what we think anything is, and just let a kid get out there and figure it out. And I'll tell you, it was the kids that figured this out. 9-year-olds figured out how to make baseball work and cheer each other on. And they weren't just, the token kids on the team that tried it. Michael led the team in RBIs, and Mitch was such a fast baseball. He was such a fast runner that we had to figure out stealing, because he was going whether you wanted him to or not. He was stealing bases. But they've also, Michael played football. I was just doing a story today for everybody, especially at Penn State, because, Michael played football for a while, and then he wasn't big enough to stay on the O-line because he played center, and had to give up that dream for that and turn to his music and became a sound tech guy. Like, he's incredible with sound systems and bands. And he released an album when he went to Nashville for school for a year, but he missed football, and he wanted to be at a D1 type of school where football's at the center of it, because he loves that sport. And then the long story short is, this week, I can't stop smiling. I talked to him today, and I was in tears because this kid had to give up this dream a long time ago, and he kept trying to figure out football. And lo and behold, the gifts and talents that God gave him for his purpose in this life, in terms of music and sound and supporting and running venues and all that kind of stuff, it all came together. He's at Penn State, has spent the week getting all the sound ready for the big Penn State-Ohio State game tomorrow, where you're going to hear the Blue Band playing. They recorded them last week, and they'll put that on in the sound system somehow. So I don't know how any of it works. I just keep smiling, and I'm not retaining any of it, because I'm like, Michael he's in the stadium, and he's experiencing helping the football team, right, in a whole different way. And I've also noticed that, if he would have kept looking at the door that was closed on playing football, and me on the dream of how that was going to look, we would have kept staring at that door, we never would have seen the ones that were opening. Michael saw those doors open for music, for sound, he's in a pre-law program to get involved in record labels with copyright. Like, he saw this whole new vision for his life that, interestingly enough, has now involved football at the biggest school, with this huge rivalry tomorrow, right? It's pretty incredible.
Oh my gosh, I got chills again. That is incredible. And I told you, I'm a Penn State fan. My sister, she's downstairs. My brother-in-law will be watching the game, and that's just amazing.
Well, you know what's crazy about that? Like, COVID canceled him being able to go in the stadium, and me being up there, and all of our neighbors tailgating, and everybody was so frustrated, right? But if it wasn't for COVID and the restrictions, Michael wouldn't have gotten this opportunity. I'm going to end up crying. He wouldn't have gotten this opportunity to have all of his worlds come together and support the football team in the way that he's talented to do it. Who would have thought that would never have happened?
once again, it's one of those things where you just don't know unless you put yourself out there and you're open to exploring what opportunities are out there. By the way, we have a Facebook user who just posted Bravo. I guess Bravo. Thank you so much. I don't know why there's not a name there, but we appreciate you watching our program. Kristin, what about your daughter? What is she up to?
I'll tell you what, my Carissa, so she was born into a family with 2 blind kids already, right? And she's only 13 months behind Mitch. I do not recommend that to anyone, just putting it out there. It was a little nuts for a while, But here's the beauty of so many people think that Carissa has a sad element to her life, having both of her brothers blind. But I will tell you this, there is no sadness whatsoever here because Carissa was born into inclusion, accessibility. She was born into the scene that I wish the entire world was, where she sees the cane, where everybody sees the white cane as sad and challenging and depressing, like that's a limitation. No. Carissa sees that as a tool. That's all that is. It's not a barrier. It's a tool. That's how a blind person gets from point A to point B without bumping into things. She sees Braille as a tool. I'll bet you she would tell you she sees a wheelchair as a tool, hearing aids as tools. She doesn't have the concept that we all have and instantaneously make a judgment, a bias, and count that person out. She's just like, okay, where are we going? What are we doing? You got some cool tools? I got you. And she's been a team player in her bones since she was born, because that's how we've had to operate, and there are times my boys are so independent, but there are times when they just can't be. It's obnoxious to even think that they would be able to be independent for every single thing. Nobody, sighted or blind, is independent for every single thing. And she learned the whole teamwork and a little bit of, assisting and raising your hand when you need help and all of that. And I got to tell you, having those skills from birth to 5, and practicing them and knowing them and that being her life. She's everybody. She's an incredibly talented sports athlete in every sport that she picks up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally cannot wait for her to drive on her own. She has her permit because she's on fields and she's all over the county, right? And she's in demand on teams. She's in demand on teams for her talents and her skills, but mostly because coaches and players want her on their team, because she's the kind of kid that not only will she follow directions and do everything that you ask, she can bring out every single player's talents and she'll talk to them about it. Like, okay, you're not strong on the right, but you're strong on the left. And this person over here is going to compensate this way. And we're going to work together, because that's how the conversations in our home have been for all these years, and she doesn't have the hangups that we all have about talking that way to people. And she does it in the most kind and supportive, and it's like unconditional love pours out of her. But for anyone that is thinking that, that poor Carissa that has this life, oh my gosh, it's been the most extraordinary experience for her and has made her the most incredible human that you can sit and hang out with.
What a beautiful family you have. That is so touching. And there's so many life lessons to learn from what you guys have been experiencing. And it's all great, the outcome for everyone in your family. And I want to talk about your new book also, because I think that's really exciting. But we have to take a quick break. So if you will stay with us, we have more from Kristin Smedley after this commercial break. We'll be right back.
Mm-hmm.
Located at 121 Haddon Avenue in Westmont, New Jersey, is Margie Cedrone, artisan jeweler. Margie's been in business for more than 30 years. She works with her clients to create custom pieces of jewelry to reflect their personality and help them make their own bold statement. Starting in the renowned Jewelers Row in Center City, Philadelphia in 1988, Margie works directly with her clients to develop one-of-a-kind pieces such as necklaces, engagement rings, wedding bands, unique watches and tennis bracelets, as well as a myriad of rings and earrings for everyone in your family. She also has worked directly with Dr. Jacalyn over the years, creating unique pieces of jewelry to reflect her personality. She does pearl stringing and repairs on site at 121 Haddon Avenue. Call or text Margie at 215-384-7155. Margie Cedrone Jewelry is open by appointment only. Make your own bold statement. Hi, I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I'm the executive producer and host of the Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn programs. My programs are on RVN TV, Business Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live. I'm also the morning host of Tuesday Morning Coffee on RVN TV. I'd like to invite you to be a guest on one of my programs as well as consider sponsorship. Your sponsorship can include a custom-made commercial designed for you by the Dr. Jacalyn team, or you can use one of your own commercials. You have the opportunity to promote your brand, your book, or even a cause that's near and dear to you. You can reach out to me at Jacalyn@drjacalyn.com or through my website, drjacalyn.com. Thank you. I'd love to have you on my team.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacalyn. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacalyn.com to book an appointment today.
Hi, welcome back to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. I'm here with Kristin Smedley, and we are live on Business Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live. Kristin, thank you again for being here today. You have such an incredible story. Let's talk about your new book that's coming out. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so I teamed up with a good friend of mine that we say we have no idea how we do not work well on paper. We are complete opposites, me and my buddy Mary Fran Bontempo. But the one thing that we have in common is that we have been nailed by some sucker punches in life that just, CRB1 blindness is a 1-2 punch to the retina, and having 2 kids affected was quite the 1-2 punch to my heart, right? And Mary Fran, she woke up to a phone call on Mother's Day years ago to find out her son was in the hospital dying of a heroin addiction, and she had no idea. And we've had a bunch of stuff in between all of that and after all of that. But here's the thing: everyone is always saying to us, how do you get up in the morning and not only survive the day? I mean, I'm talking about thriving and all this stuff. And we're laughing and having a good time and finding the good in every day and silver linings. And how do you do that? And there's so much talk of resilience, especially now, right? It's got to be the number one word that's out there in Google or whatever after this whole pandemic, about people being resilient, businesses being resilient. But what Mary Fran and I learned as we got to talking about how we've managed to take what's happened to us and not just get back up and wait for the next punch and get stronger. It's not about that. It's we each, for me personally, I ended up creating this program at my son's elementary school that is like none other in the country for educating blind children. And then created a nonprofit patient organization for them. Look, I was going to be a third grade teacher. I don't know anything about it. I can create a literacy program, but starting a nonprofit that went from 10 families on Facebook with this little teeny tiny rare disease to being known globally, and winning the Champion of Hope award last year, the top in the field when I started in a hopeless pit. Like, how do you do all those kinds of things? Well, when we sat down and talked about all the similarities we had, it's almost like this formula, step-by-step kind of thing emerged of how we uncovered our own skills of resilience to get back up. And a lot of that is like mom grit, and a lot of faith in there too, even though both of us at different times had walked away from that. But there's a lot of elements to resilience that a lot of us have. But then we say, it's great to be resilient and get back up, but it's when you really look at what are your gifts and talents that you uncover your brilliance and put them in the forefront and use those, tap into that to not just recover from being broken, but to move from broken to brilliant and create this new path. I didn't need any new training. I mean, I was listening to audiobooks, and podcasts to figure out how to grow a nonprofit. But that's where all of the heart and that there's no other word than grit for it, because you guys know that have started businesses or nonprofits or are trying to keep going after COVID. There's more than just knowledge. We always say we have no degrees. We are doctors of nothing. And it's not even the School of Hard Knocks, because the School of Hard Knocks gave us the opportunity. It's the God-given talents and values and stuff that we have in our Brilliantly Resilient programs that we say, take a look at and explore and see where you can take your life. And it's been absolutely extraordinary for me in particular. I mean, sitting on a couch 20 years ago, which is not that long of a time, feeling like and knowing that there's nobody out there experiencing what I'm experiencing and able to talk to now. I mean, I'm watching my phone is blowing up again because I've got a international online summit in 2 weeks for Succeeding Without Sight. People from all over the world are coming in, the role models of blindness and thriving blind, to show, not just inspire, to show people that are raising blind kids, that are friends and family of blind adults, that our perceptions of blindness, once they change, the outcomes for the blind community change dramatically and incredibly. And I'm like, I gotta call the people at Zoom and ask them how I can get more people in my Zoom room. There's so many people, when years ago there was nobody. I mean, the only way to say that there's a huge blessing that I've been able to tap into in my life, and it's being brilliantly resilient and finding those gifts and talents.
What an incredible accomplishment. I'm thinking about how you're going to have this summit during this pandemic, and there's so many people that Zoom might not even have enough room for you. How does that happen? I know you have a planning background, but how did you get all of these people to find out about you internationally and then to register to attend this event?
I'll tell you what, the number one thing I learned to do, even though it was so hard for me 9 years ago when I started my patient organization, crb1.org, was to tell my story. And there was a lot of shame in that story of what I talked about with just not being a great mom those first 3 years, and walking away from my faith, and banging my head against the wall and grieving the life that I was supposed to have. And you can watch my TED Talk for where I dive deep into that, I give myself a lot of grace now, but there was a lot of shame in that story for me, but I shared it anyway, because it's what I know. And I know that this comes from my dad. I have the most extraordinary dad, and he was always a storyteller. We didn't have anything growing up, and my parents used everything we had to give us the best education that they could get us, which was an extraordinary education. We didn't have anything else. But man, could my dad tell a story. And a lot of it centered on Bible stories, and he would work soccer in for me, and all of these magnificent stories. And that's where I learned so many, if not all of my life lessons. And I thought the best way that I know how to get the word out about, I needed people to look at my boys' lives differently, because I can't have them be of that statistic that 70% of the blind community is unemployed. I couldn't have that only 30% of blind American kids are graduating high school. Like, that wasn't going to work for me. So what is one of my biggest talents that I had to utilize was sharing my story and every single piece of it. And little by little, I was reaching more and more people. And I've got to have an extra gene for tenacity. And some of you may say it's nagging. I call it tenacity. Some think it's stalking on Facebook. It's grit and being tenacious, and just found key people and ask them to help. And let me tell you, when you ask people for help and to connect you to somebody else that can help on an even larger scale, I've learned that has become, it was my skill, networking per se, and merging ecosystems, which is a group that I'm in now, learning about asking people for help and connecting with other people. I was, if anyone could believe it, I was a shy kid early on. But now, it's like that mama bear thing, like this, my kids need this. So I'm going to go out there and ask people. And I've had people say to me, to an entire email blast, Kristin Smedley needs genetics for dummies. She doesn't know anything about this rare disease. Why would you listen to her? And after I, cried on the couch for a little while after that remark, I'm like, well, does that exist? I don't know anything about genetics, and the best was somebody had said to a really big group of influential people, Kristin Smedley's a cute little mom that'll never make a dent in this field. And don't even bother, and here's God at work in that, and the power of standing up for your kids and doing what they need, regardless of what everybody thinks of you. When the first ever gene therapy was before the FDA, to whether to be recommended for approval or not, to change the course of blindness and actually reverse vision loss. When that was before the FDA, there were 12 people in the world invited to testify on its behalf to get it approved. And me and the guy that said I would never make a dent were 2 of the 12 that were invited.
Wow. Amazing.
It wasn't easy. I know I sit here and smile now, and my hair is a lot shinier now than it was a couple years ago, but it's grit, it's faith, it's giving yourself some grace, and it's surrounding yourself with a tribe of people that you got to have some shoulders to cry on. You got to have, like Mary Fran always says, I'm the one of the two of us that if you're in the pit, I'll come and hug you. I'll bring you a nice little beverage. We'll have a good cry about it. And then she's the one that comes along and yanks you out, like, nope, we got to get out of here. Like she always says you can visit, but you're not going to live there.
Well, something that I just wanted to mention, aside from thank you for that incredible opening of your heart and just sharing things that are so personal, is that somebody could look at you and say you're an intelligent, beautiful, accomplished person. It couldn't have been that hard for you. But hearing all the obstacles that you had to overcome, all the doors that were slammed at your face, all the people who said she's not going to make it, I'm not going to help her, you found the people who would help you. Yeah, you got it. You got to keep going. And I'm learning now. I just turned 49, and I'm just learning now that when there's a no, when there's a horrific sucker punch, when you wake up and after 20 years of marriage, you're suddenly single and your life is getting turned inside out and upside down, when you can look at it as, okay, you take a step back and you take a breath and you look at it and say, what do I need to learn? What do I have inside of me that I can move past this? And how can my life get better? Because I've been there when I'm like stuck in that pit and can't find any meaning in it and furious that it happened in the first place. I've sat there and half of my hair is fake because I was there and my hair all fell out. Like, it's just, it doesn't get you anywhere. But like I said, when you have a tribe, I had a whole probably 25 elements that got me back up after divorce and looking at being a single mom, doing it all by myself for a few years with kids, a blind kid trying to go to college and another one, things not working out in high school. And I've got parents that raised me in unconditional love, which I will tell you is the foundation of everything. If you can give your kids nothing else, you give them the experience and the blessing of unconditional love.
it will take you from crying on a couch to being known around the world as a champion of hope. It's the foundational thing that all of our kids deserve. And then if you don't have a family that gives that, you find a friend and you bring only the people into your world that can give you that and keep the toxic out. And my kids have learned to do that, which has been an extraordinary thing over the past 4 years, to watch them give and accept unconditional love and remove toxic. But you do have to surround yourself. And I did come back to my faith. I actually have a book coming out at Easter, because Easter was my journey every time with my faith, of coming back to that with my with my flaws and all, you guys, coming back into faith to say, okay, I tried this on my own. Look at the mess I made. Maybe I should go another route. But faith has been a really big part of my journey and being brilliantly resilient, and really taking a look at having good friends that will tell you what your gifts and talents are if you can't uncover them yourself, and tapping into that, and then keep taking those steps to rise.
So wait a minute. Is this a third book?
Yeah, I cheated a little bit because I have a co-author on Brilliantly Resilient with Mary Fran, but then the next one is mine. I'm actually doing Brilliantly Resilient is a series. The first one coming out is the overall Brilliantly Resilient story and how you can be, and then we are doing deep dives into each of the reset, the rise, and uncovering your brilliance as little a series of people to go along with us on this journey, which is really cool.
That is really cool. So, Kristin, we're coming to the end of our program, but you truly exemplify everything that this program is about, and why I do Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn: the hope, the inspiration, overcoming adversity. I was wondering if you can share with us, because I think this is truly important, when we have some kind of obstacle, when we have that tape recorder that's going around and around, you're not good enough, how long do we get to have a pity party for ourselves? Like, how long do we get to sit on the couch and cry?
I'll tell you what, I think for every person it's different, and you got to have that person in your life. Like I have Mary Fran that will force you to not live there anymore. But interestingly enough, here's a little gauge for you. Mary Fran wrote a book called The 15-Minute Master. And I tell you, the 15-Minute Master is about when you have a crisis. Sometimes, like when you have a heroin addict, you can only go about life 15 minutes at a time before you're too stressed out. She couldn't think of a whole day. She had to think of 15 minutes and surviving that 15 minutes. And I got to tell you, that 15 minutes is a great starting point for like when COVID hit, and I'm trying to decide whether do I go into Costco and get, the food for my kids, or do I deal with the toxic person in my life that's going to hammer me for going into to Costco and risking bringing a virus home, and I'd sit there for 15 minutes in my car and cry over the stress of the fact that so many things were out of control. And then it was like, guess what? You're a mom. Should hear my speeches to myself. You're a mom, you're a TEDx speaker. I go through, like, if somebody was introducing me like you did in the beginning of the show, then I'm like, get up, but and I would say, if you cannot do it yourself, you have got to open up to somebody. And look, I've opened up to people with some really hard stuff, but it's if you listen to the Brene Brown teachings, there's so much you got to let go of that shame. And when you start to let that go and realize that that's the thing that's holding you back, and honestly, I fill my mornings with inspirational Max Lucado, and the Jesus Calling book. Like, I fill my mind as soon as I wake up in the morning with messages that I know God wants me to hear, instead of everybody else's messages. And I don't even look at my social media until at least an hour that I'm up and moving, so that I can start my day in my mind clear in what my purpose is. Does it always stay right on track all day long? No, but it sure does help me in that pit to not stay there super long.
And one last question I have for you, especially for our audience, people watching and listening. Would you say that being positive, surrounding yourself with positive energy, starting your morning off the way that you do, is this something that is a lifelong journey, and it's something that you can actually be good at because you practice it over and over and over again?
I think that, honestly, at least for my experience and my journey, I only got good at it because I had to practice it over and over. And believe me, there were times, look, 4 years ago when my hair all fell out and I was painfully thin. I couldn't function because I was in such turmoil with all the stuff coming at me. People were saying, try this, read this book. And I was just on a wing and a prayer trying this stuff. And I'm like, this is never going to make it any better. I'm doing affirmations and I'm saying these things and I'm praying these prayers and I'm talking to these people and I'm in this Bible study and my life still sucks. I'm a little bit of like, I just want the finish line. I don't really like the journey a lot of the time, but, and then I started understanding a lot of the brilliance in the journey. And I am very blessed that I have people come into it and notice like all of their different roles. But, I know for a fact for me that it's a practice every single morning. And I ended up getting up an hour earlier. At 10:05, my alarm goes off to get me going in the morning to fit it all in, because I actually cannot start a day now without it, because my day falls apart if I don't start with this incredible routine that I have. But it's definitely, look, I've been doing this for 4 years and I'm still adding new things and taking some stuff out. And, but my gosh, the outcomes of that have been absolutely brilliant.
The incredible passion that you have is just coming through this screen. And I'm hoping that people on Business Talk Radio, they can also feel the incredible passion that you have and the sense of just constantly giving back and helping other people and going above and beyond where most people would go. I want to be able to share your contact information. We have been sharing that for people on social media, but for people listening on Business Talk Radio, you are the author of Thriving Blind, which is the #1 new release on Amazon. Coming soon, Brilliantly Resilient, Reset, Rise, and Reveal Your Brilliance. And the best way to reach you is your website. Is that correct?
Yeah, KristinSmedley.com is where you can find everything, including the Brilliantly Resilient program. But yeah, you can find me there, and you can get me at smedtalk@gmail.com also. And all over social media on Kristin Smedley with an IN. I'm not the EN that everybody else. I'm like, what the heck happened? I'm the IN. But hey, I stick out, right?
You certainly do stick out in the most phenomenal of ways. So thank you again for being our guest today. And of course, we definitely want to have you back because you are not sitting still. And I know that when I reach out to you in another few months, you're going to have more things to share with us. It's been an incredibly uplifting interview, and you are just a tremendous person. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, thanks for having me. And thanks for doing this, to share these stories that inspire people to keep moving, keep going.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a true joy. So I will see you backstage in a couple of seconds. And I just wanted to thank everybody out there who supports our program and watches us. And I did share a commercial that I made today for sponsorship. We are always looking for guests. Fortunately, this program on Friday is booked until mid-February. And then we have our business talk show on Wednesdays at 2. And that is booked till the middle of December. So if you'd like to be a guest, please reach out to me at Jacalyn at drjacalyn.com. And also, we're looking for some new sponsors. So please reach out. We are very reasonably priced, and we can help make a commercial for you if you don't have one already. So thank you to Chris at Business Talk Radio for taking us across the airwaves. And thank you to people on social media who are watching us. We are all about hope, inspiration, and stories of overcoming adversity. And a huge thanks to Kristin Smedley for sharing her phenomenal story about her family. Stay safe, stay strong, and thank you. We'll see you next week.